One night, as I sat in the darkened living room, clutching the remaining stumps of my fingers, I heard a faint whispering sound. It was coming from my bedroom. Gathering what little courage I had left, I crept down the hallway and slowly opened the door. The whispering grew louder, a cacophony of voices all speaking in hushed tones. I saw nothing unusual, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I started sleeping with the lights on, but it made no difference. Each night, another finger disappeared, and soon my toes followed. My hands and feet were becoming grotesque, mangled stumps. Desperation consumed me. I became a prisoner in my own home, too terrified to sleep but too exhausted to stay awake. One night, I resolved to stay up until I found out what was happening. I downed cups of coffee, swallowed caffeine pills, and paced the floor, my eyes darting to every shadow. Around 3 a.m., I felt a sudden, overwhelming drowsiness. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't fight it. My eyelids grew heavy, and I collapsed onto the couch. I woke up to the most excruciating pain I'd ever felt. My toes were gone. I screamed, the agony overwhelming every other sense. Blood pooled around the stumps of my feet. The pain was so intense that I blacked out. When I came to, I was in the hospital. They had managed to stop the bleeding and had sedated me heavily. The doctors were bewildered. They kept me for observation, but even under constant surveillance, another toe went missing. It was then that I was transferred to a psychiatric facility. My time there was a blur of medication, therapy sessions, and endless questions. The doctors tried to assure me that I was safe, but I knew better. Each morning, despite the heavy sedation and locked doors, another digit was gone. They couldn't keep me there forever, and eventually, they had no choice but to release me. The case was deemed a psychological anomaly, something beyond their understanding. Back in my apartment, the pattern continued. My life became a waking nightmare. I took to wandering the streets at night, hoping to escape whatever malevolent force was targeting me. But no matter where I went, I would wake up to find another piece of me missing. I began to notice changes in my reflection. At first, it was subtle, a fleeting shadow, a faint outline. But as my condition worsened, the reflection became more distinct. It was a figure standing just behind me, featureless and dark, watching me with an intensity that chilled my soul. I turned to the only option I had left. I sought out a reclusive occult expert, a man named Marcus Gray. He lived in a ramshackle house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by talismans and protective charms. When I told him my story, he listened without interruption, his face growing grimmer with each word. There are entities that feed on human suffering, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. They exist in the shadows, preying on the vulnerable.